Hey guys, Dark Skeleton here, and the other day I was trying a strange variant of a control warrior that I just decided to put together. It doesn't run things like Gamash Hellscream, it doesn't have Alex Straza, and instead it has things like Onyxia and Harrison Jones, which aren't really cards you generally see in Control Warrior. Now, I've never really had all the cards necessary for a legendary Control Warrior deck in the first place, so that's one reason. But the second was that I was really afraid of priests. I didn't want my Ysera to get mind controlled or Shrinkmeister or Cabal Shadow Priested, or the exact same thing to happen with the Ragnaros, so in a way you could say I was going for anti-mind control. But also in this deck I happen to be running double Brawl because I know that there are a lot of cheesy aggro decks out there. Now you'll see that I'm going up against a mage, and I gotta ask you, when's the last time you really saw someone seriously trying to play a stalling, very late game mage? I mean, there are a couple people who would try to do the Giants thing, possibly comboing that with Echo of Medivh to get exactly 60 Molten Giants onto the field. But ever since GvG's come out, I don't actually think I've run into that deck. I've only seen it on other people's YouTube channels. But anyway, what I'm clearly going up against here is another generic mech deck, a very aggressive one at that. Him being able to get out a Mech Warper followed by an Enoyotron actually is a bit of a problem for me. I couldn't just axe that would be a waste to just take out a Divine Shield. And my creatures dealing 1 damage, it's going to take a while for them to even get through an Enoyotron. So already being able to drop a Chill and Yeti for 3 mana, he has some serious pressure on me. Now, knowing that this is a cheesy mech deck we're going up against, I have to take care of that Mech Warper. It's not even a question. If you let that thing stick around, then he's just going to get way too much tempo for me to ever deal with. So, luckily, I do have creatures which do benefit from hitting 1 attack minions, like my Armorsmith and my Acolyte of Pain. And then I can War Axe the Mech Warper. All in all, I gain a card, I gain a couple of armor, which I use up on the Mech Warper. And then I'm only going up against a nice Mechanical Yeti, which isn't nearly as bad. At least he's slowed down just a tad. Now if you look at my hand, I definitely have a couple of strange articles in it, one being Gelbin Mekatork, which is just in there for the lulz. I guess getting a heal bot would be nice as well. And then the Faceless Manipulator isn't exactly strange for a control deck, but it is not that useful in a matchup like this, where everything the opponent has basically costs 4 mana or less. So he drops another Enoyotron and a Snow Chugger, which both, I think, in combination, turn out to be the bane of my existence. Snow Chugger is actually one of those mech cards I was kind of underestimating before the set officially came out. And that's because I just figured, oh okay, so it freezes you, but you can just take it out with a Fiery War Axe anyway. But if it ever gets that freeze on you before you can take it out, then that can be a significant problem for decks like Warrior. My Matter Bomber there, another non-standard card coming out to the field to do precisely nothing. The whole idea of running Matter Bomber, of course, was to get a lot of procs on Acolyte of Pain. And there comes the freeze. Luckily, I can't even play my Gore Howl because it's only going to be turn 6 here, though that's still kind of a pain in the ass. Next up he goes ahead and throws out a Sludge Belcher, which I felt was a little bit out of place in his deck, but I guess if he was going up against other aggro decks it would come in handy. I honestly wish I could Baron Gaddon here, but I'll just play my mana efficiently, throw out the Gelbin Mekatork, gives me a chicken, which at least is going to bait something out of my opponent. I was kind of hoping for a Fire Blast just to make his mana get spent up, but he just runs the 1-2 into it. Aside from that, the problem this entire game has been that although I'm playing from behind, which is normal for Control Warrior, I'm really struggling to keep up. I think the only real good thing that came out of this turn is that I forced him to use some of his direct damage, so he won't have that later on to finish me. The problem is now I have nothing on the board to compete with him, but that doesn't make a good setup for Baron Gaddon, taking out 2 of his guys and weakening his 3rd. But at the same time, my life total just gets weaker and weaker, and I don't really have any good cards for survival in my hand. I mean, there's the Brawl, which is good if he were to play a lot of dudes. There's a Whirlwind, which could kill that Mechanical Yeti, certainly, and possibly kill out some other guys. The Gore Howl, if I have to play that, that's just going to get me closer and closer to death, but that might be what I have to do. And Harrison Jones, useless, obviously, it's a mage. Faceless Manipulator and Acolyte of Pain, also useless in this current situation for this matchup. So he goes ahead and makes the trade, giving me a freezing coolant, which is actually excellent. Being able to freeze a minion for a turn, I don't think I could have asked for a better spare part right there. He throws out a Spider Tank and a Cog Master, which, kind of a weak turn, at least he's finally slowing down a bit. Best option in my mind to play for the win is to go for the Gore Howl here, although it will constantly keep me at a low health total. I don't really think I have much of a choice. Now, killing the Spider Tank does weaken the Cog Master, but I don't think I was really thinking about the fact that he definitely has another mech in his hand. That's what his deck does. So now he's got 3 pretty painful creatures on the board, threatening me with lethal, which is a big deal. I would like to get some minions down to compete with his board, but on a turn like this, I think that the only real option is to Brawl. I have to keep him from having minions next turn to attack me with. I do get a pretty good result, killing off the piloted Shredder, forcing his Death Rattle to proc, giving him a pretty crappy 2-1, and leaving him with the 4-4 Gnome. Obviously what I'm going to do here is Whirlwind, draw a card, give him a card too, which is scary, and take out his Gnome. Now, finally, I think this is the first time in the game where I've technically had board control. Unfortunately, I'm already down to 7 HP, so I'm so scared of him just having a second Fireball, which I very well may have actually given him by killing off his 2-1. So here comes out his army of random mech crap, and a random Earthen Ring Farseer. Now I gotta wonder, with the Sludge Belcher and the Earthen Ring Farseer, was this guy trying to play defensively against other decks or something like that? It must be working somewhat for him to get to rank 15. Rank 15 is not actually that bad. Now here is probably one of the most crucial turns for the whole game, I think. I have 3 creatures on his board, technically threatening lethal with me again. I have a Brawl in hand, I have a Freezing Coolant, and I do have a Gore Howl for taking one of them out, plus I have an Acolyte of Pain on the field. So there are a couple ways of dealing with this, some that can actually clear his entire field, and others that can keep me at a higher life total. What I wasn't really thinking about was the fact that that is a 2-attack minion, and my Acolyte of Pain had 2 health. I actually wanted to use the Acolyte of Pain in that Brawl to possibly win it. But yeah, a bit of a mistake there. So now I have to kill 2 minions, the Damaged Golem and the Earthen Ring Farseer. And for this turn, I definitely need to deal with them in some way. I have to reduce that damage coming in, or I'm just gonna die. At this point, I think I've basically given up on the idea of Fireball not killing me. So I'm okay at sitting at 4, 5, or 6 HP, but for the sake of reducing that damage coming in, the Freezing Coolant, I think definitely worth it there. Now the Mage deck has slowed down a lot, and my turns are generally going to be more powerful now, because he's making kind of a more rush deck. But this Mage doesn't want to run out of options. Somehow it seems no matter how many minions I deal with, he still has another mech to throw on the field. I know he got that 1 card draw. But geez, drawing into Shield Maiden there probably saved my ass. I don't think there was any other card that really could have helped too much. Maybe a Shield Block would have been nice. But being able to Shield Slam the Yeti is a huge deal. Now I definitely have board control with a 5-5 on the field. Getting myself back up to 10 health and still having at least a really weak Gore Howl on the field does make me feel a lot better. But it's definitely not over yet. He still has 4 cards in hand. All he needs to do is keep going for my face. Not really sure why he Whirling Blades there. Oh wait, it's so that he can kill my Shield Maiden off with the Fire Blast if I choose to kill the Harvest Golem with it. But yeah, overall a very weak turn from him for once. I mean, how many Fire Blasts has he actually used this game? 1, 2-ish? Considering how late this is in the game, that's actually kind of crazy. At this point, I just have to bring more dudes out onto the field to maintain board presence and take care of everything he throws at me from this point forward. I definitely feel safe enough to use the Gore Howl to take out that 3-1. It also will keep my Shield Maiden alive, putting it at 2 HP instead of 1, which is actually a really big deal. Now, I wasn't really sure what else he could have in his hand to really stay in the game, but it turns out he's running Azure Drakes, which is a very fine card to run. It's always been a strong minion, being able to draw and get you spell power. But he actually draws into another one to have perfect mana efficiency for that turn, and that's a bit of a pain. It's a hassle to say the least. Drawing into my shield block, I can at least finally get more armor. I know I'm going to be doing a little bit of trading somehow this turn, so I do believe I throw down the Frothing Berserker. But I do have to think about this, because I don't want to trade both of my 5 attack minions off unless I absolutely have to. So, to protect my minions, I actually just trade out the Gore Howl for a Death Spite. A 2 damage Gore Howl isn't really that valuable anyway. And this lets me keep Harrison Jones as a 5-4 on the board, which is a pretty big deal. 2 5-4s on the board, that's what I want to see. Now, of course, you may notice that this Control Warrior, in the end, doesn't really have as much of a powerful late game as the typical Control Warrior deck. I'm not really sure what to make of that yet. This was literally the 3rd game I ever tried with this deck. Although I imagine that makes it a lot weaker against other control decks. Now, I actually use my Faceless Manipulator here, finally. I'm pretty much thinking, hey, I'm not really going to get too much of a better use out of it, so I might as well put a minion on the board. Being able to proc the Death Spite's Death Rattle is actually huge. I did put 1 Battle Rage in the deck, and here it actually kind of pays off. 2 mana to draw 3 cards, that's pretty nice. You won't really see too many other control decks running Battle Rage, though. And of course I get pretty fancy there, swapping the 4-1's attack and health around to protect my Harrison Jones. At this point, I think I can safely and redundantly say I feel safe about this game. Having 2 good minions on the board, drawing into my Onyxia, which is a fun card. It's anti-mind control because you can't mind control all the whelps. That doesn't necessarily make it good, but hey, I wanted to run Onyxia. So he just shows the rest of his hand, using up his Time Rewinders on a Earth-Eneming Farseer to do essentially nothing. I guess you could call this his way of admitting defeat, but he doesn't actually give up yet. And one of the things to note is that I'm actually running really low on cards. I've actually drawn through my deck faster than he has. Now, I really doubt he's running cards like this, but if he had a Flame Strike or a Blizzard, that would actually be a huge deal for me. I only have a couple minions in my hand, and probably 2 or 3 more in my deck. If he actually managed to kill all my minions, I could easily die to fatigue. Out of my piloted Shredder, I get, of all things, a minion that can't even attack the Ancient Watcher. I was really looking at that and was like, wow, that's so gross. That's never going to do anything this entire game. At least it wasn't a Doomsayer, though. So I armor up, and obviously I'm still going to be playing for board control. I'm really skeptical about whether I want a shield block, though, for more armor, because actually drawing puts me closer to fatigue. But here I'm going to go ahead and trade off Harrison, and I believe I use Onyxia to attack into the 3-3 as well, thus protecting the whelps, kind of keeping a stronger field overall. Yeah, I definitely could have done more damage if I used the whelps on the minions instead, but I actually wanted to protect the whelps, use them as 1 damage removal at some point. So losing a couple points of damage on Onyxia actually wasn't a big deal for me. But looking at my hand, I don't really have all that many useful things. I have a couple weapons, which is good for hitting his face, I suppose. I have a Spellbreaker, which can silence anything I need it to. And I have a Frothing Berserker, which, with a field like this, actually can get a lot of damage out. But that's only assuming there's actually minions for me to trade into. Now, I do realize that I can Spellbreak my Ancient Watcher, which is huge, and glad I actually put that silence in the deck. It might as well have just said Battlecry, create a 4-5 that can instantly attack, because there's no way in hell that mage would have ever bothered attacking that. I think one of the funny things is that if he spared one of his deck spots for a Flame Strike, there were many situations where he would have just outright won the game. Needless to say, though, it was a very tough one game, and he definitely deserves my respect. It was tough to get through that mech deck. I wasn't sure if I would ever manage to recover, and it definitely does show me the strength of cards like Shield Maiden, which I might add is another card I really underestimated. So I've been Dark Skeleton, I hope you found this useful and entertaining, and I'll see you all next time.